Hello all. Thank you for joining me at EYENALYSIS Weekly, live at 5. I am your host, Cara Marie Ringland, and I will be offering information about iridology and how your eyes reflect your health. The iris of itself is where your colors are, and they particularly show you your genetic information. So everything that your grandparents and your parents all gave you are kind of funneled down into you as a human being, and you can see their history. With that information, you're able to formulate a plan to prevent illness. A lot of times we've inherited our genetics from our grandparents and family, but more intensely we inherit their lifestyles and their eating patterns and habits, the way they think, their kind of methods for handling problems, poverty consciousness. All of those things we inherit through conditioning, primarily because of our parents, grandparents, and especially our intimate family lives. So a lot of us are kind of imprisoned by our genetic codes due to the lifestyles that we lead. And what I want to highlight is how iridology can give you the keys to understanding the genetic codes that you've been receiving from your family lineage, and learn how to prevent illness by changing your lifestyle so that you can care for your needs specifically. You can maintain your strengths and support your weaknesses through an honest accountability and inventory of what you have inherited. Now, in the iris itself, you can also identify the personality traits that you've inherited. So there's the ability to see if you're a kind of a stressful kind of person who handles anxiety. That can also show that if you're a type A person who actually thrives in pressure. So the idea that blanket statements, like you need a calm environment to be a producer, for instance, or to create, that doesn't necessarily apply to every single kind of person, especially according to their personality traits. You can also see how you can tailor a plan of nutrition to support your personality as well. So like, for instance, when you see that somebody's, say, a type A, right, that has kind of runs on what we call an anxiety kind of a structure, you can support the nervous system through diet and nutrition. And also you can add all kinds of different kinds of cleansing techniques, hydrotherapy, mindfulness practices, all of which can create a comprehensive lifestyle transformation plan according to you as an individual. So I also want to highlight that the sclera, which is the whites of the eye, that is where we also see current inflammation. So that is where we're going to see what is going on now. So your genetic thumbprint of information is not going to necessarily show you what is currently going on as far as inflammation. It can show you what you've inherited from your grandparents. It can show you a tendency or a probability towards having illnesses when you get older, oftentimes in life. So that's why I use iridology as an awesome ability to prevent the illnesses that we may be set up for. So what I wanted to identify that I was more so than anything today, I wanted to really bring into awareness the history a little bit of iridology in particular. This book here, of course, everything's going to be reverse, but this is the very first iridology chart that has been published. This was published in the early 1800s by a man named Ignaz von Pexley, who was a monk in Hungary. Now, the story is kind of a beautiful little tale where he caught an owl in his garden, and in the struggle, he accidentally broke the bird's leg. He observed a black stripe rising in the owl's eye. He nursed the owl back to health and released the bird, but it remained in the garden. Von Pexley observed white and crooked lines in the eye where the stripe had been, and eventually they became just a tiny black dot surrounded by white lines and shading. Von Pexley became a physician and never forgot the incident with the owl, and this is how the modern forms of iridology began. Now, Ellen Jensen has done a great deal of research to discover the more ancient roots of iridology, which was kind of started in Egypt, of course, with being able to identify different compositional issues, emotional issues, and can see really honestly the light of the eye, right? And so even in the scriptures, in Matthew, it has a scripture regarding that let thine eye be single, let thine eye be pure of light, all right? If you've ever noticed when someone's sick, they have a dull kind of look. They have a flu or a fever. It's a glassy look, right? Depressed, sad. You can see that in the eye, right? So the eyes are a great window to the soul in so many ways, emotionally, spiritually, physically, mentally. And the beauty of iridology is that it takes it to the next level of looking at it from a scientific and practical manner. So yes, the science was kind of birthed in Hungary by Ignaz von Pixley. And he, as a monk, was a healer. So as a monk, they oftentimes took care of the people who were getting sick. And he had a history of caring for people where he started to take note of their eyes and would take notes of particular ailments that they would have, and deciding how he could, he started to see cataloging of common symptoms or signs in the eyes that were being collaborated or corroborated with people's illnesses. So he started to taking notes. Well, the beauty of this is that there was another gentleman who also started studying similar information. I will have to get my book to get the particulars of that. But in my last iridology class, we were given the synopsis. And here in the early 1800s, Ignaz was doing his own independent study. And mind you, obviously, this is long before global communications. There wasn't like radio or even newspaper articles that were really being shared from country to country. So ironically, several hundred miles away, another physician was making note of iris signs that he was seeing and was also corroborating it with primary ailments and health conditions that seem to have similar signs. So that is kind of the basis of the beginning of the early research in the modern history of iridology. So fast forward into the future, around the turn of the century in the 1900s, it started to become a little bit more common, especially in Europe, where they were looking at the eyes. And in Germany in particular, where there's Henri Kriegser, he wrote a book. I actually just received it from my late and great teacher, Carol Geeck. I want to give a special blessing and a great gratitude to her. She is a lighthouse and a beacon of knowledge and wisdom in the 21st century. She was born in 1940. And was the victim of abuse. Her father had injured her while she was in the womb of her mother, and she was born with a broken hip. And with that came a series of surgeries. A lot of them were scientific or medical experiments in the 50s, 60s, and even into the 70s and 80s, where she was suffering from so many different side effects from all of the medical malpractice and mistreatment. And of course, in those years, there was not a lot of awareness around chemicals, toxins. Most of the things and the practices that they did in the medical industry were intensive surgeries that were mechanical, a lot of substances that were used, even down to the metals and the plastics, were really not bioavailable or identical. So she went through many years of suffering, and she's a dear friend of mine who's gone now. She passed away at the end of May at 83 years old, and she survived, and that's the beauty. Her suffering and experiences was the gift for our generation to learn from, because she conquered the odds. She saved herself and her husband, Edward Geeck. Hello, Ed. I hope you're watching. Who, both of them had been diagnosed in the 80s with chronic conditions. She had been told that she had tumors or masses on her breasts, and her husband at the time was also looking at chronic pancreatitis, and his brother had actually just passed away from what they believe was pancreatic cancer at that time. It was in the genetics. It was in their lifestyle. You know, she was a great chef. She loved her husband, her children. She was amazing at cooking all the treats and the sugary wonders. And she found herself on a journey of looking for alternate ways of healing her husband and herself at this time. Her children were near about grown. She was 38 years old when she started to have an awakening. And so the reason I share this with you is because what experience that she had brought her to the healing world. And that's where every choice, every decision, every experience we've ever had has a greater purpose for us, right? So she found herself in a health food store looking for teas and tinctures, and noticed that there was a gentleman who was speaking and offering a talk on the eyes, come to find out, in iridology. And who was that man but Dr. Bernard Jensen, the father of iridology here in the United States. Truly the pioneer of the modern form of iridology. He had learned from a chiropractor. He had been a chiropractor. And originally, the chiropractor he was studying with started to give him information about the eyes. They were doing nutritional studies where they noticed certain nutrients, took care of certain ailments, that also addressed certain compositional issues or organ systems specifically. He became a scientist, very avid and dedicated to making sure that he was including every aspect of scientific discovery, where he was really, really being selective with making sure he had used the scientific standards of study, where it wasn't just conjecture. It was actually doing the research, keeping the notes, maintaining, educating his people with as much of the down-to-earth, practical standards, making sure they really knew why they were doing what they were doing. And he had a health valley, a clinic down in Escondido, California at that time. And my teacher, Carol Geeck, was studying in Del Mar, or she was living down in Vista. And she ended up deciding to go to his health ranch, where he would have talks every week, and he would also be guest speaker at different health food stores around the area. And she started taking his classes, and she was an avid learner. She had quit school early due to wanting to get married and leave the family that she was unfortunately dealing with a lot of mistreatment at. And so, of course, at that time in her life, it was like 1958, or 57, she decided to leave her home and get married at 17 years old, left school. Within the year was pregnant, proceeded to study anything she could that was in the medical world at that time, because of course she had been through so many surgeries and hospitals and in and out with doctors and nurses that she had learned all the lingo. She became a nurse. She helped in the surgical unit. She also helped with babies. She was incredible for just absorbing information, and she worked at Scripps back east in Cleveland, and was just always learning. So when she met Dr. Bernard Jensen, she lit up and found, and I think for her, as she expressed to me so many times, it was a ray of hope when, especially in the medical world at that time, there wasn't any hope for healing naturally. It was all about drugs and surgery and eating canned food. Everything had been changed so much after World War II at that time. Everything was being canned and mass produced, freezer frozen foods There wasn't really any more family homesteads and gardening practices. People have been really stripped away from their connection to nature, ultimately. And I mean, she came from the 1940s where her mother, who grew up in the Kentucky Ozarks or whatever, had learned herbalism from her father. And at that time, you know, in the 1920s and 30s, herbalism was a huge part of every home. You had your tonics, your tinctures, you made teas fresh from the plants that were outside. A lot of them would do wormings every year, several times a year, to keep the body free of parasites. They ate food that was straight from the ground. They canned food straight into jars. They hunted. They fished. Their foods were not full of hormones or mass-produced inside of slaughterhouses, right? So it was an incredible experience for her to find someone like Dr. Bernard Jensen, who had a health ranch, who was taking people back to nature. He was teaching them how to eat whole foods, walk barefoot and activate their acupressure points on the bottoms of their feet, how to irrigate their colons to cleanse themselves from unwanted wastes. And especially as we come out of the industrial age, as we come out of this last whole chapter of time where we have been inundated by toxins, poor eating habits, I mean, fast food, junk food, you read in the ingredients, it's paragraphs of words you can't even pronounce. And if you really do the research on what these ingredients are, most of them are byproducts from chemicals and the factories or the, artificially produced vitamins even. Like if you look at wheat, enriched wheat right now, it's all enriched with chemicals, essentially, like riboflavin. That is not a natural thing. That's actually not bioidentical or available, and it can create a lot of problems for people who have gene mutations, especially the MTHFR gene mutation, which makes it so that you're not methylating. So you're not able to actually assimilate the riboflavin. It's supposed to be methylfolate or methylcobalamin, right? So then they're giving you folic acid, which is not methylfolate or riboflavin. Both of those are not being absorbed. So that's a little tangent, just to show you, though, what's going on in our food systems and in our world. Yes, we're getting closer to more natural standards, especially with the non-GMO projects, the organic standards that have been birthed out of the last 20 years of people really bringing that forward to the public eye. But we're still dealing with a toxic overload. And we're also dealing with issues that are going on with genetics. Because if we've been eating canned food for several generations now, because if it was really presented in World War II and changed so much of the global way of getting our nutrition, what's happened is the genetics have become weaker. So there was a study in the 70s, I believe, that was done with cats, where they did a study and they did several different foods for the cats. One was whole cow milk instead of, because they were weaning the cats off of the mothers. One was pasteurized milk, and one was condensed milk, okay? So what they discovered is within about 5 generations, the cats that were being given condensed milk or evaporated milk were sterile. Within about 3 generations, they were having deformities and genetic mutations. They were being born with crippling diseases, some of them not making it beyond kittenhood. And so what's interesting is in that kind of portrayal and that study, what Dr. Bernard Jensen did was took that study and wanted to apply it to humanity and seeing how we have weakened our genetic gene pool through poor diet and lifestyle. And those genes are now being inherited by our children, and if they maintain the same diet and lifestyle that their parents have given them and their genetics, they're again weakening their genetic pool again and setting themselves up for even more disease early on in their life. Okay, that's why we're seeing young kids now with diseases that were honestly not seen until you were oftentimes into your 40s or later. We are looking at a sad situation for our planet, and the beauty that I see within iridology and preventative medicine and natural healing is that we can change, we can heal, and we can reverse genetic issues. We are not a victim of our genetics anymore. Look at epigenetic studies. Look at Dr. Joe Dispenza and what he's doing even with meditation. We have all kinds of different things that are happening through technology that we're able to actually prove conjecture that was just conjecture or theory even 20 years ago. And that's why with iridology, within the modern history of iridology, I mean, I came into it 22 years ago when I met Dr. Carol Geeck and was invited to be her intern at the clinic, Lifestyle Transformation Health and Research Clinic up in Northern Idaho, where we were studying and we were using dark field microscopy as well. So we had all these different kinds of things. We had microscopy, we did urine sampling, we looked at the tongue, we took photographs of the eyes, we looked at the fingernails. We got a comprehensive analysis of a lot of the biofeedback that was coming from our clients. And then through question and through diet journals, we were able to identify different ways of helping them heal. But now we have all this incredible new technology with photography, especially within iridology, and neuroscience, like with what Dr. Joe Dispenza is doing in epigenetics, to be able to identify that we can actually reverse genetic issues. We can actually heal chronic conditions that in times past you were just given a prescription or a diagnosis and an expiration date, or an invasive surgery, or a list of pharmaceuticals that you are now going to be having to take potentially for the rest of your life. And it's like, okay, we're in an acidic condition. If we have inflammation of any kind, we are in an acidic state. So if we're going to add pharmaceuticals, those are more acids. And I don't understand why we would do that if we're not going to address our diet and lifestyle at the same time. So I am all for doctors. I want to make that always very clear. I am not a doctor. I am not here to diagnose, prescribe, or to avert anyone from getting their diagnostics and going to see their physician. We need our doctors. We need our hospitals. We need our nurses. We need surgeries, because we have a lot of unnatural diseases due to several generations, almost 100 years, of being in a highly polluted planet, okay, and eating really poorly denatured foods. So the more we incorporate our medical world and then create the keys to success by educating ourselves on how we can eat, the habits that we can form, so that we can actually reverse the damages that our grandparents gave us and strengthen our strengths so that we can excel and we can live a life full of joy and longevity and vitality, so that we're not bogged down and feeling sick, right? Who wants to have a life where we're feeling like half-mast, you know? We have so much that we can do with our bodies. We are miracles. Every single breath we take is a miracle. And so when we can live in that way, and that's why I absolutely adore iridology, because it brings us back to our health and wellness. It teaches us how to care for ourselves. It is our user's manual, because it's not blanket statements. Yes, let's alkalize. And let's look at our genetic structures, okay? Because lemon juice may not be so good for particular compositional designs, right? So, and that's where I've realized, like, a lot of the things that I've tried to do, you know, coming from the 90s, doing the raw food, the vegan, the things, some of those things were not actually in my best interest, genetically speaking. And so the more I've learned about my genetics and how I can address my needs personally, I have more keys to my success. And I'm a living testament. I mean, just, and I've gone off the track. I've fallen off the wagon. I was given this information when I was 21 years old. I was raised by an herbalist in the woods. I rebelled. just like everyone does. It's like giving a gold coin to a 3-year-old and expecting them to really value it. You don't know what you don't know, and you don't know what you have until it's gone. And so in my own personal curriculum, I walked a rocky path for about 6 years, starting 10 years ago, that sent me into a tailspin. I was dealing with a lot of trauma, consequently a lot of coping mechanisms that were really poor. I started drinking. I was a chronic consumer, basically. And in so doing, I really depleted my system. I gained about 65 to 70 pounds of weight. I was incredibly depressed. I had all kinds of aches, pains, issues, infections. I was dealing with, really honestly just not wanting to live. Extreme depression. And I didn't really see a way out of my predicament at the time. And I am so grateful for those experiences because it brought me closer to understanding others and having been walking in the shoes so that I can truly have the empathy and the compassion and the curriculum, the knowledge, the understanding to be able to help people where they're at without the judgments, because we're not perfect. None of us are. And to think that we are is really, really, it's honestly taking us away from what our true purpose is. We've got to be honest. We need to be accountable. And from being honest and, true form of accountability, no spiritual bypassing, then we can identify our strengths, our weaknesses, and how to support ourselves properly, right? Now, going back to the history of iridology, I wanted to show you this photo. This is Dr. Bernard Jensen. He was an incredible man. He died in 2000, which was the year I actually started my my path with iridology. So I was able to study with Dr. Ellen Tart, who later became Dr. Jensen, and she married Art Jensen, Dr. Bernard's son, and took over Bernard Jensen International, which is the international program that offers products and charts like these to the world so that we can help people learn all about iridology and how to help others. And it's pretty powerful because all around the world, iridology has become more and more widely accepted. It is a mode of diagnosis in different countries like Sri Lanka, the Philippines, Australia, parts of Europe. It's looked at like reflexology, where with the hands, and the feet, we're able to see the reflex map. So in the iris, it's a reflex map. So you're able to identify, especially here, the center is your digestive system. The pupil itself is your nervous system and shows more or less your spinal column, your digestive system, also what's going on with your stomach lining. Between the pupil and the collarette, which is about 1/3 from the pupil's edge, and it's that beautiful little halo within your eye, that is the section there is called the nutritive zone. So this is where you have digestion, assimilation, and elimination. This is where you can identify the quality and the constitutional strengths of your digestive system. So you can help assist it through diet and lifestyle and supplementation. So a lot of the times I prefer to go to the whole food on everything if all possible. And we're living in the 21st century where a lot of food does not have as much of its vitality, or we've been in such states of depletion that we really need to have nutraceuticals and high forms of supplementation to reverse damages, to get back to zero, basically, because we're already in the red, right? So bringing us into a current state of health and wellness. So what I have found is doing a lifestyle transformation plan it's addressing every aspect. So you're looking at your diet. You're looking at supplementation to enhance your diet. I like to bring in a lot of enzyme therapy. When I was doing live blood cell analysis, that's where I noticed that enzyme therapy was so incredible. You could see differences in the blood within 15 minutes of taking enzymes, and where the blood cells would actually break free. If they were, say, stuck together, they could actually break free and start to free float through the serum again. I also am a huge proponent of detoxification. So Dr. Carol Geeck, Dr. Bernard Jensen, he was also a huge proponent of diet and tissue cleansing through bowel management. This book really is what changed my life. I had chronic conditions as a child, lots of pain, constipation, skin allergies. And so I was in a situation where I was going in and out of the doctor's office, no results. Had been given steroids, which then turned into swelling, and then they gave me diuretics. I was a moody mess all over the place. I was in high school, really insecure, incredibly depressed. Felt like there was no hope in sight. My parents had taken me to a naturopath when I was about 12, and that's when I first learned about Candida, which was a huge eye-opener. It's the first time I started to read labels and start to get an idea of food additives. I had had a food allergy test and had a pretty good idea of some of the things that I was allergic to, and was able to start creating new changes. However, it was the 90s. You know, it was 1994. The amount of information out there was minimal. Actually, it was 92. So, like, our food substitution options were really minimal. It was like, I was getting off of dairy, so then we were drinking rice milk. Well, if you want to do a study on Candida, well, then you realize that sugars are what feeds the Candida, or the fungus in the body, and the yeasts. So I look back now and I realize I was just drinking sugar, and of course I wasn't getting results. Well, the other thing is with detoxification that I cannot emphasize enough. You can eat right all you want. You can do a meditation till those cows come home. But if you are working with a dirty body, meaning inflammation, toxins, constipation, or amoeba, fungus, and bacteria, or virus, then you're really just adding good things onto a dirty plate. So I am all about, let's clean the plate. Let's make sure you're not bringing anything terrible to the meal, and giving yourself the ability to assimilate and absorb your nutrients without the toxins that are already there, creating a problem. So what I suggest, which with Dr. Bernard Jensen's book, he has it very well laid out, different formats for detoxification. But as we discuss here, it's not even about, say, if you have toxic residues that are left in the digestive system. It's more so even looking at the inflammation. Okay, so anytime you're in a toxic state or injured, right, you have a swollen ankle. Well, and the same is within your organs, your joints, your tissues, your ligaments. If there's levels of acidosis, inflammation, or perhaps even a direct allergy happening, right, there's going to be swelling of sorts that goes on. And so those organs, like how the liver becomes enlarged, for instance, right? Or if you have bloating, well, that's actually literally your organs or your colon being swollen, right? And so what we want to do is be drawing the fluids, right, out through the lymphatic channels. So if you look at a chart of the body, the lymphatic system is one of the most vast in the body. Not only is it all under your skin, your glands, the lymphatic body is also all within the colon, right? And so what happens is that if you can draw the toxins to the colon, the blood system empties into the colon, the lymphatic channels empty into the colon. So you're actually pulling from every part of the body through those channels and just calling it into the colon to be eliminated through its proper elimination channels, right? Otherwise, those toxins will start to build up and different organs will have more distress, Or sometimes you'll have skin outbreaks, for instance, and especially if the kidneys are overloaded with acidic conditions, then the skin they call is the third kidney. So it'll start to get inflamed, might even have outbreaks, which are really just the body trying to push toxins out, get it out, right? So what I have been taught through Dr. Bernard Jensen's book and his and all of his teachings is that it'll draw toxins to the colon using different tonics, different herbs, different formulas that you can actually use them, kind of like when you use baking soda to pull up wine or something that you spilled on the carpet. You can use these tonics, tinctures, and formulas to draw toxins from every corner of the body and have them eliminated through the colon, so that you don't have to suffer either the complications of having those toxins in your joints, tissues, and ligaments, right? Which is achy joints, get uric acid crystals, gout, like I say, skin afflictions, brain fog, any kind of infection issues, even down to like having ear problems, things like that can all be signs of inflammation. So you're going to call that inflammation, you're going to draw it, and you're going to get it out as fast as you can. Because that's the other thing. I know a lot of people who eat cleansing styles of ways of eating, do different things with that level of consciousness. But if they're not eliminating properly, then those toxins have the potential of being reabsorbed. Even if you're trying to purge them out, if they're sticking around for any period of time, they are most likely re-intoxicating you. So through diet and lifestyle, yes, making sure that you have a routine that encourages proper elimination. I'm a huge fan of giving yourself your mornings, creating morning time for having a standard of ritual and practice, so that you're not stressed in the morning, you're not rushed in the morning, so your bowel has the opportunity to eliminate naturally. If you're having issues where you're noticing that you're not eliminating properly, which really honestly should be at least twice a day, the very bare minimum is one time a day. And really, if you look at most digestive, like dogs, for instance, that are in nature, for the most part, they also have a smaller intestinal tract, but whenever they eat, they eliminate, pretty much. And so, honestly, peristalsis, which is the muscular action that happens within the colon, typically is stimulated by eating. So, ideally, after your meals, you should be receiving some kind of a cue to start an elimination naturally. So like I say, if this is not happening, there are ways to create proper elimination through diet and lifestyle that can increase your health that way. I also am a huge proponent of hydrotherapy, and so whether it's through colonics, which you can hire someone to do for you, or your in-home systems with the Colima board, which was what Dr. Bernard Jensen was a huge fan of, or you can do enemas. And so a lot of people don't like to talk about these things. In our culture, it's kind of like we don't talk about most of the things that actually are causing most of our problems. So I'm here to put a twist on it. It's time to start handling our own business. Let's deal with it. Let's eliminate. Let's get well. All right? We all have these natural things that go on. The whole idea that we don't is the sham. And so the other elimination channel that we need to look at is our skin elimination. So skin brushing is also an incredible way of moving the lymphatic system. We talk a lot about fluids and hydration. Well, we're, it's like 98% water ultimately. So a lot of that, we have 8 pints of blood. We have a heart that pumps it all day long. We don't even have to think about it. Whereas with our lymphatic system, there's up to 42 pints of lymphatic fluid. Like, if you put that into your thoughts. but no heart that pumps it. So really it's your legs and your arms and activity that generates the pumping action. Okay, so if you are not being active, especially, then you're most likely not getting your lymphatic system to move properly, which will create hardened lymph nodes potentially. Those things can also turn into cancerous growths potentially. And so moving the lymphatic system manually is really helpful, and that's why skin brushing is great. I also really enjoy doing massage. I incorporate a lot of massage into hydrotherapy practices, even if all you have is a shower. Baths are amazing, and I have tons of recipes that you can use to stimulate your skin's natural elimination in the bathtub. And I have great options to use in the shower so that you're constantly opening your skin up, all of your pores, to eliminate all the toxins that are in the lymphatic system primarily, you know. And anytime you're noticing that you might have more BO, for instance, or things like that, that's your body's biofeedback expressing that it's trying to get toxins out, essentially, right? So I strongly encourage people not to use the aluminum-based antiperspirants that can create a lot of issues, as if you want to do studies on. Yes, we all want to smell well or good, so using other alternate antiperspirants or deodorants is wonderful. Essential oils, and also looking at not plugging our pores. So if you cannot eat it, most likely it should not go on your skin. We think of our skin as this magical barrier, but it is a living organism. Okay, it is actually our living it's the largest organ that we actually have. And it has a great big job of getting things out. And if we're plugging it with toxic lotions, creams, perfumes that are full of chemicals, we are actually, you know, it's going straight into our bloodstream, straight into our lymphatic system, right? And if it's high toxins and high chemicals, our liver is going to become responsible for filtering those out, right? And our liver, you know, like my teacher Carol taught me, our liver is like an air filter in a car. It filters chemicals mostly, and fat-soluble toxins out all the time. The difference within the human body, unlike a vehicle, is when the air filter gets too plugged, the car just won't be running very well, or at all for that matter, right? Whereas with the human, because we are a living organism, our livers can just grow. And that's where you see people with enlarged livers, the cirrhosis issues with alcoholics. That's due to the fact that their liver got so congested with all of the toxins and didn't know what to do with it because the elimination channels were messed up. There wasn't the right nutrition or lifestyle that was supporting healthy liver, so it just expanded. It just got bigger to make room for more toxins, right? And so what we want to do is, in the 4 steps of detoxification, or the pillars of the education system that I teach, straight from Dr. Carol Geeck, inherited from Dr. Bernard Jensen, is you've got to alkalize to prepare the body for cleansing, purge out the colon as best as one can, so that you make room, because if this is impacted at all or swollen through inflammation, and the elimination isn't occurring as well as it should, then the issues that are going on with the upper organs, like the liver, gallbladder, pancreas, spleen, are not going to have a place for their process to work properly in the small intestine for assimilation, especially. So then you're not even getting your nutrition, right? So that's why a lot of us are hungry all the time, even though we ate 2 hours ago. We're actually not getting our nutrition. We're not getting any nutrients. So it's all just filler at that point. We're just eating for pleasure, you know, or eating to fill our bellies, but the nutrition isn't getting into our cells. So we're in a state of depletion. We're in a state of deficiency. We're constantly starving on some level. And a lot of us aren't hydrated enough. So we're eating when we're really needing to be drinking, you know, and keeping ourselves hydrated. If we're such a high percentage of water, our body's many cries for water, most of the time, the problems that we have stem directly from a form of dehydration, okay? So back to the 4 pillars, the 4 elements of cleansing, it's, natural health, it's the alkalizing the colon, caring for the liver and specific organs, especially anything that comes up that's particularly inflamed for the individual, and then going in after any kind of foreign entities, whether it's virus, bacteria, fungus, parasites, amoebas, all of those things have no place here. And if you think about it, we're at 98 degrees, like fungus, for instance. If you watch, I've used this example before, a carton of strawberries at 98 degrees for 12 hours, it turns into a nasty, moldy mess so fast. And that's what happens within our body if we're eating sugars, and particularly starches, or fruits and vegetables that are, or actual yeasts, whether it's in bread or beer, alcohol, right? That are actually, we've got basically a brewery going on in our bodies. And what happens is whenever there's fermenting going on, that means there's off-gassing going on, which means there's blood alcohol, basically, that's also being absorbed. And there's been studies done where people who don't even drink, who have high states of fungus in their bodies, will actually blow a blood alcohol test because the alcohol content is in their bloodstream and is actually creating a lot of brain fog, mood swings, food cravings, to basically kind of stoke the fire for these organisms so that they have a host that makes it ideal for them to continue their life cycle, right? So anyhow, this is kind of a broad spectrum. I know I get a little detail oriented, but my main thing was wanting to talk about the modern history of iridology and why I am so grateful to be here holding the candle. I just went, like I said, and went to Carol Geeck's home. It's the first time I went there since she passed away in May. I returned yesterday and spent a couple of days with her husband. Thank you, Ed, for continuing to hold her legacy and treasure her collection of knowledge that has been given to me as a great responsibility to keep her jewels and gems of wisdom safe in this treasure chest. I picked up a number of books, and we'll be going back for more because her collection is so vast of just incredible resources for healing. And I know that the experiences that I've had in my lifetime, alongside of the education that she gave me in my internship, as well as the things that I've studied independently, like Thai massage. I'm a massage instructor for Spirit Wind School of Thai Massage, teaching CEU units, that I have a big responsibility to bring this knowledge to the subsequent generations, because Carol and Ed has stood as a beacon and a testimony to natural health. Because, like I said, in the 80s, they were given diagnosis that looked like fatality. Ed was actually given 5 years to live. He was 42 years of age. He was told that his pancreas was failing, and he had about 5 years left. His brother had already passed. So, like I say, Carol ended up teaching or learning from Dr. Bernard Jensen and became his intern. And alongside with Dr. Tart, they were doing case studies and taking eye photos and doing the notes and cataloging information and the research. And Carol, because of her broken hip, spent a lot of time in wheelchairs and doing recovery. So she had a lot of time to continue to study. Her avid need, her thirst for knowledge and wisdom and understanding took her to every single bookstore, where she collected this insane collection that is being gifted to me so that I can share it with the future, with my own children. Because something that really came to me, there's a ray of hope I pray that people can see, amid all of the destruction and the difficulty that's going on in our planet politically, spiritually, physically, and emotionally for most people right now. We just went through a pandemic. Okay, the last time that really happened on this planet was the Spanish influenza in 1919, I think it was. So with that came the world's unrest, all right? And that included World War I, which eventually turned into World War II. That also created all of these issues with canned foods, the nuclear family that exploded, family values were pretty much flushed down the drain. We had a lot of illnesses starting up at that time. Cancer was out of hand. So what I really wanted to highlight is that Dr. Bernard Jensen, in 1929, he was studying natural health and was a chiropractor and went to, he went to Russia. He met men who had lived 152 years. He went to the Himalayas. He studied longevity, okay? Dr. Jethro Kloss also wrote his book Back to Eden around the same time. So there was all these greats that arose out of this difficulty. And the world had become global at this time, where everyone knew that they were affecting each other, right? And I just want to say that that is mimicking and mirroring today. So now we have a whole wave of people after the pandemic. There's world distress going on. There's all kinds of issues happening, and what we need to identify is that there is hope, and that there are ways that we can take care of our bodies, minds, and spirits so that we can come into the 21st century, through the 21st century, with vitality, longevity, and joy in our hearts. We can change the world through one step at a time, and I truly believe that which you put into your mouth, especially, and that which comes out of your mouth, can truly affect your life, okay? And so bringing these principles back to our community, the Essene Gospel of Peace, that's what Dr. Carol Geeck truly believed in, was derived from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which was the principles for cleansing using the elements, the air, water, earth, and light, okay? And using different practices to purify our systems so that we can live a life that is optimized according to our genetic needs. And that's where all of these beautiful things are coming together in this beautiful pot, this offering, this treasure chest, this lighthouse that I am carrying the torch for my beloved teacher, Carol Geeck, who came from 1940 and has watched all of these technologies be born. And I am so delighted to be able to utilize the social media networks, everything that we have available to us, to be able to bring this information to the world, and to help enlighten people that where there's a will, there is a way. And it is not a magic pill, I'll just tell you that much. It takes dedication, diligence, okay, and consistency. It takes living the practice, and doing the work, talking about your business. Let's cleanse your bowel. Let's purify thyself of body, mind, and spirit, and bring that energy forward so that we can be as vital and brilliant. We are souls inhabiting these beautiful vessels, okay? Let's live our purposes while we are here. There is an amazing time going on this planet that either we can sink or we gotta swim. And we can either be depressed or we can feel the joy of aspiration and be an initiate of sorts to live a life where we're actually invoking our souls to take up residence within our temple bodies. So that's what I wanted to say today. I hope that this falls upon fertile ground, and that those of you who are able to tune into this content can feel the resonance. And I'm open to feedback. Please send me feedback and any kind of questions that you might have. I am offering 15 minutes free of analysis if you want to send me your photos via Messenger or WhatsApp. We can start a conversation. If you have a chronic or a common health problem, no question too big or too small. At the Lifestyle Transformation Health and Research Clinic, we worked with chronic conditions. I have, protocols and lists that Dr. Carol Geeck would offer to people as suggestions to, and we also have the documented research for their results that I would like to be able to start extending to the public. And I also am here to help people with the seasonal cleansing because it's coming into fall. And if you're down under, it's spring. So with every season change, it's a good time to do a deep cleaning and a sweep of the home and the body temple. So as within, so without. So if you got to dust your fan, it might be a good time to do a little deep cleaning on your own body. And with that, I'm going to leave you with a blessing. Thank you so much for tuning in, and have yourself a great afternoon. You can find me at EYENALYSIS by Carol Marie Ringland, and I'm excited to announce that I will be offering a great new offering here at the Stone House in Nevada City, California, offering live or in-person workshops on Fridays from noon to 2. And we will also be bringing EYENALYSIS as a modality here and starting to create a list of healing services and modalities that will be offered to the public. And there's just an amazing community spirit that's being built here in Nevada City, California. And I want to say thank you to Edgar Casey, who wrote about this place way back in the 30s alongside another great, right, with Dr. Kloss and Dr. Jensen, the ray of light that opened up after the influenza. And look at it, it's opening again today. So I am just so grateful to be here, to be an able body, mind, and spirit, to have healed. I lost 65 pounds. I quit drinking. And I've conquered a great deal of mental imbalances through, doing my mindfulness practices, from eating right, from cleansing the body, from being an activated soul in a physical body. So much ado to you. May you have a beautiful afternoon, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you so much, and have a great afternoon.